honestly wish that there were more members here, including on our own side. Now, in the absence of our leader of minority, let me take that role. Mr. Speaker, for starters, I'd like you should
be careful about taking people's positions.
You know, this is, as you know, as a lawyer, I'm holding brief. Very briefly, I'm holding brief. Mr. Speaker, let me issue two cautionary statements. First, of the 4 issues that have been raised in the President's memorandum, 3 issues would expressly require referendum. Only one relating to the funds, especially CDF funds and the oversight fund, would not require referendum under Article 255(3). Insofar as the issues on composition of parliament in terms of gender, the issues in introducing CSS to the floor, the issue of introducing a leader of opposition, there are issues that touch on the sovereignty of the people, they touch on the structure of governance and the system of government, they touch on the functions and composition of parliament, and expressly, they would require referendum. So as we discuss this, we need to bear that in mind very clearly. It's not an easy path. And the question I want to issue secondly, Mr. Speaker, is that as members of parliament, it is good to look for the interest of many people. But of paramount importance is the interest of our own citizens, of our own voters, who are the beneficiaries of these funds. I'd like it to be made clear, and honorable members said that so far the CDF funds are unconstitutional. That is not true. CDF funds are constitutional, and there is no court anywhere so far that has found the 2015 Act unconstitutional. What we are doing is we want to entrench the provision such that we cater for much more. Our sisters who are representing the counties have the NGAF. NGAF has not been properly included. We want to include the NGAF, we want to include the other funds that Senate oversight, so that we call them the oversight funds. That's why we are amending the Constitution. Let it not be supposed that we are amending it because we think that it's unconstitutional. We will be shooting ourselves in the leg. And for our own purposes, I would really urge members that we need to remove that bit of the memorandum that deals with the CDF funds and the oversight funds because we were already on it. And let's use it because as part of the ad hoc committee, we have already designed, we've gone much further than this memorandum. We have already drafted the amendments that are necessary to the Constitution and which do not require referendum. Let us move with speed, run with that, and leave these other issues that might raise partisan politics outside first. Let us take care of our interest before we take care of other interests. And if you don't heed my caution, watch this space. If you maintain these oversight funds together with these other 3 issues, they will be lost in space and the consequences will be quite dire because we are racing against time. Specifically, Mr. Speaker, the idea of amending the Constitution is not a bad one. Our Constitution is ripe for amendment. 12 years after any Constitution is enacted, it is good for citizens to sit together and look at what is bad, what is good. But amendment of any Constitution should always be bipartisan. It should always involve the public. In fact, it's not just bipartisan in Parliament, it is beyond Parliament. All previous attempts to amend the Constitution by President Moi then and thereafter by President Kibaki failed because the initiation was not bipartisan. I want to caution that this initiative, insofar as it's not bipartisan, it is the wrong way to look at amendment to the Constitution. We require a bipartisan approach. And I want to tell my brothers and my colleagues in the Justice Committee, right from the word go, this initiative will fail on 2 accounts. The first is the account on which BBI failed. And it's not saying that I agree with the Supreme Court. I actually don't. But they pronounce themselves. And that is as it is now. Insofar as this initiative is expressly by the President, and this memorandum starts by actually paragraph 1 and 2 restating the date when the President said it, and then attaching a copy of the President memorandum, it will fall afoul the determination of the Supreme Court in terms of initiation. It makes no difference that that was a popular initiative, because even here, the argument will be, but if it is a parliamentary initiative, the President is not a member of Parliament. So how will you say it's a parliamentary initiative and it is initiated by someone outside parliament? And in both cases, whether it's popular or parliamentary, it passes through parliament. The second mistake was the president writing to the speaker. The speaker is a neutral entity in this house. The person to initiate would be the leader of majority, the leader of minority, or an individual member. But expressly, the leader of majority now introduces the motion, but the motion is reading that it was written to the speaker. So there are already two technicalities that makes this initiative run afoul of the law. Let me examine two things now. One, the idea of the leader of opposition. Mr. Speaker, this is a bad idea. It is an idea that is not well-founded, either in terms of constitutionalism or in terms of purpose. And it does not take cognizance of Article 108 and Article 130. Let's be clear, Mr. Speaker. In this House, there is no government, there is no opposition, as per the Constitution. If you look at Article 130, national government comprises the president, the deputy, and the cabinet, not the leader of majority, not any of you here in parliament. And when we come here as minority, we don't come here as opposition, we come as minority. The word opposition does not appear anywhere in the text of the Constitution. So how can you introduce a leader of an non-existent entity? Honorable Wanyonyi, I'm telling you now, I'm helping you understand the law. So just listen. That idea is precipitated on a misinformation and misunderstanding that those who are in the majority are here on behalf of the executive, and those in the minority are here on behalf of the opposition. That is not so. In fact, the whole idea of this presidential system is that we, as a parliament, check on the executive as a collectivity. The moment you start trying to bring the leader of opposition, you run into many problems. The first problem is you can actually have a parliament where the majority has not produced the presidency. Can you imagine a situation where if we had maintained what we believe is ours, Azimio is the majority in this house, and Kenya Kwanza is the minority? Can you imagine a situation where then Azimio would have the presidency, then you get another person who is in Azimio to come be the leader of Kenya Kwanza in parliament? Isn't that ridiculous? It is based on the assumption that whoever produces a majority in parliament will always be the president. It is not so. Secondly, if you look at 108, there's the leader of majority, there's the leader of minority. So I suppose you then remove the leader of minority and replace it with the leader of opposition. And what do you do with the leader of majority? Do you still call him or her leader of majority? You'll call them leader of government business, and there's no government in parliament. But what if the person who's run up is actually an independent? Because the Constitution allows. So you run as an independent, and then you get the second highest votes. Then now you come to parliament to head a party which you are not part of. It is ridiculous, ladies and gentlemen. Let us rethink this thing seriously. The question of having a leader of opposition because we want accommodation is a question we must examine deeply and not artificially. If we want a parliamentary system, let us be honest and adopt that system. I will tell you that in the Committee of Experts, we had actually adopted a parliamentary system, but it was changed by our colleagues in parliament then. I'll move very fast, Mr. Speaker, just 2 minutes. The question of cabinet secretaries in parliament, there will be strangers. The president is not a stranger because he's allowed. The head of treasury comes here as of necessity because we are the budget making. But the cabinet secretary does not come to the floor of this house. The cabinet secretary stays at the bar. So if you want cabinet secretaries on the floor of this house, then you must admit them as members of parliament. That changes the numbers, that changes the functions. And is it a good thing? No. First, because you will definitely weaken the committee system. Our constitution gives committees so many powers, the powers of the High Court, which have never been used. Why haven't we used them? If we can't use them as 15 or 20 people sitting and we have the power, what is the assurance that as over 349 we will use them? And Mr. Speaker, if you allow me.
Give him 5 minutes.
Mark you, that when you do that, something else comes into play. There's a reason why there's a prescription in composition of committees. Those of the majority always have a majority of one. But in the oversight committees, those in the minority have a majority of one. So that in the oversight committees, we can better check the national executive. If we come here with the numbers the way now playing, there will be no oversight. The oversight committees will be dead. Parliament as a plenary will be doing put the question. And the question will be put and the CSS will go. I want to say, Mr. Speaker, lastly, that we might think we are strengthening parliamentary democracy, weakening it. And we must be very careful, including on the question of numbers. You must know that the question of numbers in terms of gender representation goes against the contrary question of the cost. Are Kenyans prepared to pay 100 more members of parliament or not? I think the fundamental question we must ask ourselves, do we still need 2 houses of parliament today? If you ask me that, I would say no.
Thank you so much,
because we have entrenched devolution sufficiently. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you so much, Otiende. Well said. I hope you get a chance to pursue those arguments at the right time. The Honorable Timothy Roticho of Market West.
Yes,